I'm sure you can sit next to each other.
There we go. I didn't see you come in. Snuck in, right? Snuck in with me.
Sounds good.
Candidates on camera. There we go.
Some in the car. I've got some like this.
Mara's talking.
But somebody
Yeah.
I brought you colors just because. So it should be here on Wednesday. All right, Brad, you all ready? We have enough. Our quorum's back, and we're back in open session. From exec session, we'll start with the pledge. And Brad, if you could help. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. We're back, and we were seemingly just here because we had our teletown hall last night, Dr. Brown, which was very going to update us later, but not right now, because we're going to modify the agenda a bit, I think.
Yeah, just one item, if we could, on the personnel report for instructional staff under letter number 1, if we could just delete the first name. That was the only change.
Right, without objection, and I think that's will be fine. And just moving on to public comment. No one signed up. If anyone wishes to speak, Lee, do you have anything you want to say?
Hi, folks.
It's always good.
31 days to go.
There was a reason I reached out to Lee, because I know we're counting the hours, days, and minutes. But Lee, it's great to see you here, as always. So and we might as well go ahead and go right down to student reps and LACS, which has had plays and stuff. And
Yeah.
go right ahead.
So last Friday was the opening night of Hamlet, and it went great. So did Sunday and Saturday. They were all good, and it was very emotional, but it was beautiful performances. Since we last met, LACS has had 2 speakers and performances during our all-school meetings. One was a Native American hip-hop artist who goes by Superman, and he spread messages of love and music. It was really fun. And another one was a water protector and Oscar-nominated director named Fidel Moreno, and he came to discuss Standing Rock and his upcoming documentary, which is Gathering Our Hearts at Standing Rock. And then several students participated in Spring Rites at CSMA. They were part of a popular class at LACS taught by John Raymond, and they read their personal poetry aloud last Sunday, and it was really moving, and it was very creative and very brave to share such personal things. And last week, students voted to get rid of the plastic disposable cups in our water cooler fountain things, instead of like the fountains coming out of the bowl, you know. So we voted to get rid of those plastic disposable cups instead, to bring in our own water bottles, and we all have worked together to donate water bottles to those who don't have any. So, yeah.
All right.
Senior appreciations will be happening in June. Happens at the end of the year every year, and it's an opportunity for anyone in the lower grades to appreciate their friends who are graduating. So students are signing up to pay their last tributes to their peers, friends, and mentors. The New York City Culture and Ethnicity trip is hosting a car wash this Thursday, May 11th, from 11:30 to 2 o'clock at LICS. It ranges from $15 to $25 for either exterior, interior, or a combination. The local WWOOFing trip, WWOOFing stands for Working on Organic Farms. They'll be spending time working with the Youth Farm Project as well as visiting other local farms over Trips Week, and they're holding a chicken barbecue this Saturday, May 13th, and invite all of you to stop by Agway from 11 to 3 for some local free range chicken, sides of baked beans and coleslaw. It'll be great.
You killed free range. Not quite as free as they thought. A lot going on at LACS, and we appreciate our graduating high school, Ithaca High School folks as well, and Ithaca High, please.
Absolutely. With our end of the school year, we are currently in class officer runoff season. We have a number of positions, including vice president, president, and treasurer for each class. But more importantly for the board here, we have currently 4 candidates for the representative board position, 2 rising seniors and 2 rising juniors. So as a board of currently all seniors, it might be a nice change to get a diversity on the board. They'll most likely be attending next meeting, so you'll get to meet them there. In terms of sports, we had a number of victories recently at the Ithaca Relays competition, which is a very prestigious track event. Our both track teams won, and baseball won versus Vestal yesterday, and finally boys lacrosse won versus Binghamton on the 5th.
Brain Team is hosting their Spring Quiz Bowl tournament at Ithaca High School, and that will be happening on the 13th, and they will continue to compete in national competitions until June, I believe. And also, as the year's winding down, we have Junior Prom on the 20th at the Johnson, which is the same venue as last year, and it was great, so they're repeating it. Regular tickets are $20, $18 for early, and $10 for free and reduced price lunch students. And they're going to have catered food and a DJ and a photo booth. And since it's the Johnson, they will have the opportunity to view the artwork and go up onto the balcony, which is always nice. We've had a lot of things happening in terms of music. The last weekend of April, we had the New York City music trip, and it was a great experience for the 150 people who chose to attend, from the choir, band, and orchestra. They got to see a jazz tribute to Ella Fitzgerald at the Lincoln Center, Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, and the New York Philharmonic, which was all great. And everyone who attended really enjoyed it, from students that I've asked personally. And this past weekend, many students participated in the NISFA Solo Festival, which took place up in Newfield. And I heard a lot of students performed well here also. And on the 18th, we will be having our annual youth orchestra concert for the 3rd graders, so that they have the experience to listen to different types of instruments and choose what they will be attempting to play next year in 4th grade.
All right, well, as the weather warms up, as you all know.
Really?
When is that happening?
We have some more sun. It is spring. Take everything we say with a small grain of salt. I mean, Dr. Brown does have his spring tie on, you know. But as this promise of spring, I should say, comes forward, field trips are beginning again. It's time for those high school students, seniors, juniors, sophomores, freshmen, are hungering to experience the outdoors, get out of the building for a day. If you're in government, you're going to take a trip to downtown Ithaca to see what the Commons is about, what the remodeling was like, how downtown Ithaca functions, all the government offices, sustainable ag, much like LACS visiting local farms, all organic, going to get to learn to really work with the sustainable agriculture. Food science, going to Cultivare, sample the food, how those food flavors work together, the science all behind it. Physics, going to Darien Lake, physics of roller coasters, understand all those equations behind it, all the math, all of that. Teachers, unfortunately, just stuck with the paper, but we're very grateful to teachers. I believe today is Teacher Appreciation Day. Additionally, as the calendar year clicks ever forward, as it normally does, we're getting towards the end of school, which means for most of our seniors, some of our juniors, even sophomores and freshmen, APs. Last exams will conclude this Friday, but we've had everyone beholden to the rigor and grip of the AP curriculum, and now they'll be moving on after their tests to teacher-led projects furthering their education. And I believe that's all we have for this evening.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Ithaca High. Board responses regarding anything that is on your mind. Chris, go ahead.
Thank you for starting, well, you mentioned Teacher Appreciation Day, and it would be we would be remiss if we did not thank all teachers for everything they do every day, especially educating our children. So it's I truly appreciate everything folks do. I would be in big trouble if I did not mention the car wash at LACS. I will be bringing my vehicle there, and it's not going to rain that day. I've checked the forecast 3 times. So, however,
it may snow, but it won't rain.
I will be checking my car for every single detail, so please, don't scratch my baby. And I encourage everyone to go down and do the same.
Thanks, Chris. Anyone else? Moira, please.
I too will be bringing my car across the street to LACS. And it really, I've been putting off doing it myself. Now I don't have to, so I'm very happy about that. Also, Teacher Appreciation Day on our personnel report. Today we have the announced retirement of 3 long-term teachers in the district. Dan Furlidge at ACS, Gwen Freeman at Ithaca High School, and Marilyn Mayer at Northeast. And so we would like to particularly honor them on Teacher Appreciation Day and thank them for their long-time service.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Others? Anyone else? I will only add, Dr. Brown, the last ICSD Insider took a bit of a reflective look back 10 years from the 2007 bond, facilities referendum that the community passed, and it was interesting to see all that we, the district, the community did over the last 10 years, and we forget that a lot of this stuff wasn't here back 10 years ago. Work at every building. We replaced every elementary playground at one point, and all the interior work. Additions at Ithaca High. I think it was quite the accomplishment, and not only did we improve the facilities, but the district has taken that 3 or 4 steps forward that we were hoping that would come along at the same time. So really a tribute to dedicated staff, the administrative team, putting it all together, the community support. Without the community, never would have happened to start with. And I think you can see that everything kind of coming together and really seeing, outstanding opportunities at LACS, Ithaca High, elementary schools. You can see it on the Twitter feed, on that Twitter thing on the website. But everything going on at every school, every day, it's just really a culmination of, a fortunate series of events. The right people, the right time. I guess, Dr. Brown, what does it say on your wall? If not here, if not now, where? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen here. I think, Dr. Brown. And so it was a nice look, and my son did get a photo in it. So he's out in Wisconsin had a real job as an engineer with a company out there. I said, Robbie, you made the website on the ICSD, and so he pulled it up. So he did make the strength and conditioning photo. He was actually at Cornell at that time. Came down to check out a weight room that he never got to use. So that's part of it. As students we go through, and we have our own experiences, and it's an opportunity to kind of check back in and see see what's going on. And so if you haven't seen it, certainly it's on the website, but scrolling through, there's a lot of money that went into it, a lot of time, a lot of effort by many people, and just a lot of meetings, a lot of change orders, and we don't have to do change orders all the time again. But so now we're going to have to find something else to build, I guess, because it's been 10 years and we've been paying the debt down. So it's but there's always something else, and and I think that's what we probably have to start looking at is we're getting buildings that are not ADA compliant still, and there's always something that needs to be done at our schools to improve the experience of students every day. But take a look. It's really amazing what has happened over the last 10 years. So that's it for me. And anyone else? Probably not. So we'll go ahead with the consent agenda.
I'll move the consent as presented.
Second.
Second by Pat, who's running for the board again. I guess I should say Pat, right? It's, and any questions regarding consents? Not hearing. All in favor? That is everyone, and we are everyone, I believe. We're all here today, so that's a good thing, because we're ready for Dr. Brown.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Amy. And I will be brief, because between me and the next item, you're going to hear from some of the best teachers on this Teacher Appreciation Day that I've ever had a chance to work with. So I'm excited about hearing from them about the real work. But 2 items. Last night was the teletown hall conversation, and I have some data here. We dialed 5,839 phone numbers last night. 5,332 of those calls were answered. And most of them were answer machines now. But we did have a lot of folks in this conversation. Close to 100 folks were participating for upwards of 45 to 50 minutes. And if the folks were at home listening, or if you want to listen to the recording, you'll hear the questions range from everything from the superintendent's salary to the kindergarten cutoff date. And the community had an opportunity to hear from the board about your thinking, hear some data, and just a free-flowing conversation. We've received a number of emails and tweets to share support and want us to continue doing such a thing. We had a freshman at the high school email today, and I shared it with Ms. Hillman, who spoke to he and his parents sat there and listened the entire hour. They didn't get into the queue to ask a question, but they learned as much at any other time in their lives about Board of Education work and what happens in our school district. So I don't think we recognize how important that call is for our community. We're now thinking about when we can do another teletown hall conversation around another topic, maybe something around professional development, a Prom in technology initiatives, or some other topic other than budget, but people really did appreciate it. And again, we dialed a lot of phone numbers last night, and folks were in for most of the time. Secondly, we recognize teachers, but this is an opportunity to recognize some amazing Board of Education members. I and our community appreciates the work that all of our board does. I've always said that this is the hardest working Board of Education I've ever had a chance to be an observer of or work with. We have 2 certificates here for achievements as board members, for Maura Lang and Ann Reichland, for the significant amount of staff development you both participated in over the last. You're surprised. You worked so much.
I got a letter.
You got a letter, all right. And now I have the certificate. So with that, I want to say thank you for your service and all that you do for young people in our community and for me and everyone else. So thank you, and I'm going to pass these down to you. Congratulations.
School board you, huh?
School Board University.
Leadership development.
Working on another degree.
It's never too late to learn.
That's all for me, Mr.
Very good, Dr. Brown. And Liddy et al., please go ahead.
So as we bring up this amazing group of people, I do want to note that this is a staff development update 2 years ago. Pull them up farther, guys. You're the When I first started in this position, I looked at my slideshow and it said professional development for the summer. One of the things that we've really developed as a team is that this is truly year-round professional development. So the work that we're going to be doing this summer is a continuation of the work we've done this last year or 2 years, and/or it is a kickoff for year-long work that's starting, in July 1st. So it's really wonderful that I can use the word update because we're really continuing things. We have a real system going on, and these folks are the reason why it is working so well. I do want to give a little bit of a background. You've seen some of these slides before. This is our mission vision. It is the vision for all our learners, and inclusion is at the heart of it, which is why I highlighted the all, every, and every, because that's really what we're working towards. And you've probably seen this next slide as well. This is emphasizing how our professional development program really is tied directly to our vision. This engaged, empowered education for everyone can only happen at the intersection of community and culture, curriculum, and instruction. And we know that if we work on one or two of them, we can make a difference, but we can really only make a difference when we are combining all of these, when we're working with our adults to help them work with our students. Forward. So, this, over the last year and the last time I showed you this, we were working on 4 areas: cultural responsiveness, co-teaching, curriculum development, and the 8 power practices. And if you click one time, it changes just a little bit because we really have been able to, we're continuing to use our 8 power practices and co-teaching as elements of cultural responsiveness. So we're really trying to integrate those ideas into the larger idea of cultural responsiveness and inclusive practices. Our curriculum development has really expanded so much that we're really speaking to it in terms of teaching and learning innovations. So we're not just writing curriculum, we are considering the teaching and learning innovations that we can use with our community and culture, developing curriculum and instruction to engage all our students. So that's really what we're working on. So you can give it one more click and it'll show us back to, that's really where we're headed, that engaged, empowered education for everyone. Okay. Also, last year, we gave you a handout about the 8 power practices, and it has descriptors for the highly effective. I can give people that electronically again if they're interested. You can go to the next slide. As you know, you can click one more time. We have worked on these areas because the Danielson is a really dense document that we use for evaluation. We've tried to expand its use because it is really the most powerful when it is used as an anchor text. We try to come back to it in meaningful ways. It is so dense that we work together to decide on what we call our 8 power practices. They are the areas that we see we gain the most leverage in engaging our community and our families and our students to become empowered to learn. So this last year as a district, we worked on engaging with families, and you saw the results of our PLC Day in October, which was really successful. We're going to continue that work with engaging with families and adding on this idea that the way we engage with families and empower students is by creating an environment of respect and rapport. So that is our district focus of the 8 power practices, knowing that we do a lot of things, but those are the underlying pieces that we're spending a lot of time explicitly on. Let's see, you can go to the next one. So these are the 3 areas from that Venn diagram that we've been working on and that we're continuing work on this summer. We have the culturally responsive practices, we have inclusion, and we have teaching and learning innovation. And just like we have found the power behind interdisciplinary work for our students, we take that approach with adults as well. We don't have just culturally responsive workshops. We don't have just teaching and learning innovation workshops. We do it in an interdisciplinary way. So while this is in a linear way in groups, I just tried to group them the best way I could. But what you should know is if we're talking about project-based learning, it is from a lens of cultural responsive practices and trying to work towards inclusion. So when these folks are planning for these amazing facilitated times for teachers to work, they're thinking about the 3 red areas, no matter which one I put it under. I really did that to just organize things. Also, you should know that these are general areas that we are offering. We are in the process of developing our specific offerings for the summer. We're going to have an entire catalog that will go on my learning plan for teachers to choose from, and you'll hear that we're also going to continue the work we did this year in having offerings for our entire staff. So that is something that we've really expanded and tried to be explicit about, to have more than just teachers coming to our staff development. So I'm going to let these guys start talking now because I've talked enough. We're going to highlight 1 or 2 areas that they are planning their work on this summer. I am going to actually start with Amanda because Amanda is going to just talk a little bit about work with clerical and also some other work for a lot of other folks.
So very briefly, when we negotiated contracts with the Employees Association, they're often a group that don't have a lot of staff development opportunities available to them. If they do, it's very job specific, right? That includes custodial staff, maintainers, bus drivers. Some, especially with bus drivers, there's state law requirements around the amount of training that they get every year. But what we're trying to do, and what we've been doing, is really trying to enhance the opportunities for them to have more staff development around topics that really are pertinent beyond just the skill base of the job itself, but more around customer service, interacting with families, how to interact when people are calling you under stress. Oftentimes the clerical folks, the nurses, they really are under a high level of stress in their positions. We want everybody also to learn about dignity and treating others with respect and dignity. So we'll be doing a lot of Dignity Act outreach. I know that in the business office alone, Angela Jordan, along with the other team members, have designed approaches to work with folks on how to feel more confident on the computer. We've worked with Zach around using Google for everything from everyone from custodians to maintainers. And other members of that group. So there's really a richness there. We're also trying to get some law training around what the law states, whether it be around their rights as employees or the rights that others have in the workplace around sexual harassment, how to handle and address some of those issues that might come their way. And so there will be additional real intention around the workshops that we'll be offering to the employee base as well. Thanks, Lydia.
Yeah. And we're lucky to have Kate Reed, our counsel, here to provide a lot of that legal workshops and facilitating that work this summer as well. So now I'm going to go right on to Lee. He's going to talk about a really great regional opportunity that he has been developing with Matt.
Matt and I have been spending most of this year working on our swan song. July 18th and 19th, we're doing a regional conference, Inclusion for All. And we say all, it's not just in terms of the focus of students we're reaching out to. We're broadening inclusion beyond special education students, but we're going to have presenters talking about early childhood education, ENL students. So we're broadening that whole piece, and we're broadening the audience. It's not just for teachers. ESP staff members, family members, community members will be participating, presenting. So we're having ESP staff, parents presenting, along with teachers presenting, local teachers presenting. We're doing it collectively with BOCES, and I was able to work out a grant through SUNY Cortland that's going to cover a nice chunk of change, so meals will be covered as part of it, and presenter fees for the staff members out of district presenting. 2 keynote speakers, we were lucky to get them back to back. Richard Villa, not Bob Villa of this old house, but Richard Villa. Practitioner in special education for many years, administrator, teacher, on the grounds, practical stuff. Many of us heard him last year at Syracuse at the Inclusion Conference. We're bringing him in, and he'll kick it off, and we'll be talking about co-teaching, differentiated instruction, and the cultural changes needed to make these things happen. So the first day will be focused on instruction. The second day, we're kicking off with Ross Green from Lives in the Balance. He's the guy who wrote the book, The Explosive Child. And the focus will be on social-emotional health. That'll be a big parent day too. We're hoping to have SEPTA do a panel presentation and be involved in that.
The dates.
I think I said July 18th and 19th, Tuesday and Wednesday.
And our staff will be able to sign up through My Learning Plan, through the TST BOCES. We're working on how to have community members be able to sign up so that we know who's coming. It will be in the Cult building, and also breakout sessions will be in the high school with lunch in the cafeteria, so it's right on our campus.
So this morning at Instructional Planning Council, I was talking to folks about it. We're getting participation not only from the 3 counties that are part of our region, but because SUNY Cortland, which is providing some funding, is part of OCM, we're hoping to tap into teachers in that area as well, and we're aiming for 200 to 300 participants.
Is there a fee for community members to participate? So, free to the public. Excellent.
And board members.
And the other thing is that teachers who participate will not be paid sitting in on it, but they will be getting in-service credit, and we're hoping to have a planning day, paid planning day available for them. And this is all follow-up to the inclusion work that's been going on for years and years, and specifically to follow up on the blueprint work that's been happening, the blueprint for improvement of special ed.
So we're asking principals to identify teams to come to that day, those days, and then to set up for their building a day to plan to move this forward. And again, that speaks to the idea that this isn't summer work, this is ongoing work. We are bringing this opportunity to our area. We spent a lot of money last 2 summers, sending folks to Syracuse. And Lee and Matt were really like, well, we can do this. And so
do it better.
And so that's
No doubt,
really
no
exciting that we're gonna have it right in our yard and be able to have an opportunity for our folks to then plan. Well, we have these 2 days. What do we do with that thinking that we've gained? So, thanks, Lee. All right, we're going to move on to Jen Wilkie, who's a teacher on special assignment. She's going to talk about project-based learning opportunities.
Yeah, particularly with regards to the New York State Science Learning Standards, and one of the focus of the elementary work in the summer teachers will continue to deepen and develop their understanding of the new standards. Our elementary teachers have been using them for a number of years now, but we continue to look at, for example, what does assessment look like, and how can we really make sure that we're reflecting not just the standards, but the deeper conceptual shifts the standards ask both of students and of us as practitioners. So really, that's the focus of the elementary work in the summer. The middle school is just beginning this journey. At the end of May, all of the middle school teachers, science and technology teachers are gathering to dig into the framework of the new standards and really understand what those conceptual shifts are and begin to examine what the course of middle school science will look like. It is a really exciting journey. It's a long and measured journey, and I think New York State has been very clear that the implementation of these standards is going to be slow and measured. So in one sense, at the elementary level, we are ahead of the game. At the middle school and high school, we're working very cautiously, thoughtfully to understand what the standards ask of us and what that will look like in our practice. So some exciting dialogues that will start at the end of the school year and then continue through the summer.
When is the middle school work going to take place?
Well, the 30th of May, we're gathering with all of the middle school science and technology teachers are gathering with TST BOCES staff to help us facilitate this dialogue. And so that's really a very first introductory step. And what we hope to get out of that is what is our path forward to begin to make that vision. So having teachers look at the standards and decide is really important. So.
All right, Caitlin's gonna speak to some ranking work in elementary.
As far as elementary work goes, Lynn and Jen and I are finishing up some work with the entire teaching staff at each grade level to prioritize a group series of standards that would live in the fall, the winter, and the spring of each grade level, which gives us consistency across the district. It gets us clearer about our guaranteed and viable curriculum that we're offering for pre-K through 5, and then it leads us to the doorstep of a standards-based report card. So we're finishing up that curriculum mapping process with the teaching staff this spring. It will lead us into work next year as far as how are we going to, we'll be entering lots of collegial conversations about how do you gather evidence of learning, especially when you're doing local case study work and curricula units that are different, but yet are teaching the same standards. So what does it look like to master a standard in a case study that's very different from the one in a different school? And then how do we report on that so that students get the most out of that reflective work, that feedback, families understand. It's big work, and we're really excited to be finishing up on those maps. I'm also thrilled to be able to work with Mary Beth over the summer to think about some pre-K to school age transitional stuff, which I will leave maybe to you to talk about the details, but it's exciting in that it also includes ESPs, families, teachers, this sort of holistic approach. Can we skip to Mary Beth?
Sure.
Hi everybody, I'm Mary Beth Murphy. I've been an instructional coach at BJM for the last 2 years. Love working with my colleagues there. I do want to say I've actually been in the district longer than Lee, if you count the time I was a student here. I got you there. Anyway, so yeah, as Caitlin said, my own personal passion is early childhood education. So while I've been working pre-K to 5 at BJM, Caitlin and I have talked, and we're going to put some workshops together this summer. We're calling them Quality First Instruction, that's QFI that you see there, attached to reading strategies, but it's broader than that in the sense that we're really looking at changing it from pre-K transition to pre-K kindergarten first grade continuity, because every 5-year-old has a 3- and a 4-year-old wrapped up in themselves, and every 3- and 4-year-old is a budding 5-year-old. The only difference is that we silo it as adults, and bureaucracy silos it. So we're really looking at working with teachers to move pre-K first grade teachers together in their approach to working with children. This summer we specifically have 2 workshops going on. One is relationships matter, so we're going to be we're looking into doing a flipped panel approach where we have ESPs as a panel, teachers as a panel, and families as a panel, talking to each other and asking each other questions around relationships with their children and with each other, because we know that nothing matters more to a child's success than the relationship between adults in their classroom and in their lives. There's data out there that really supports that. So we're going to be moving that forward. And then it's also around early literacy. We are both from the inclusion conference standpoint and also a couple other opportunities, we're going to be looking at introducing some new curriculum, new literacy curriculum, but also looking at what does literacy for all mean. When a 3-year-old comes into our pre-K classrooms or a 5-year-old comes into our kindergarten classrooms, they're all coming with very different experiences in language, and our job as teachers is to deepen their own relationship to words and to literacy. So we're going to really be working on that and moving that also, I think, through the year and following that thread through the year. So I'm excited about that work.
Yeah, that's a real foundational work around reading. In addition to what Mary Beth is describing, we're also really working on specific strategies on how to teach reading in a classroom and working towards more consistency and comprehensive instruction in early literacy, because we really want to focus on that in the district. Okay, Lynn, they flipped it around a little, but we're gonna let you go. We're gonna talk about some case study PBL experience.
Sure, absolutely. So, continuing at the elementary level, we've done a lot of support in making sure that everybody has a foundational understanding of case studies and what that looks like. And so this summer for elementary folks, we'll really be working through our lesson design days and the unit planning days at BOCES to really help those teachers continue to refine and develop those case studies, really with an eye towards how are we engaging students in sustained inquiry, how are we ensuring that the topics are relevant and meaningful to all the students in the classroom. At the secondary level, we are expanding our case study work and really focusing more broadly on project-based learning. And we're doing that by engaging the leadership team at each building. So that is not just the principal and APs, but department leaders and other teacher leaders that serve on their leadership teams are having a release day this spring to really build foundational knowledge and shared understanding about what are the kind of the critical attributes of project-based learning that make it a powerful practice for engaging and empowering learning for students. And then this summer, we'll be doing that foundational work, offering that to all secondary teachers. So that will be an opportunity with the goal of, by the end of next year, all secondary teachers will have experienced this, what we're kind of calling PBL 101, so that there's shared language and understanding around what is PBL when we say that, and why would we do it. The leadership teams will also be having an additional planning day this summer to spend time, facilitated time with Jen or Caitlin or I or Liddy to think through, so given where we are as a school, how are we going to move this work forward next year, next summer, and what is kind of the vision for 3 years out, 5 years out, what will this look like? And we're really focusing on both kind of visionary big thinking as well as kind of small next steps too, right? So how can we, what are the little steps we can take, and then what are kind of like some of the big transformations we'd like to see? So doing that two-track thinking at the same time.
One of the things we're working on is possibly also developing what we're calling sort of like an experience, so that staff can experience what we mean by a project-based learning experience, what we mean by a case study. And so we haven't finalized that, but we're thinking of possibly a 2 or 3 day time where, as an adult, you experience project-based learning. Because we do have people that go, I don't know what you mean, actually, and so, let's try it out. So that's another place that we're looking in the summer. We have a little more leeway for that, and we're going to see if that flies, if that's a good way to go. But we have had people say, I'm just not quite sure what you're talking about. And so having that chance to just experience it, not read an article, not watch a video, that's good too, but also offering just an experience. That's another place that we're working. Zach, you want to talk about how technology fits in all this?
So technology integration is a little bit different in its utility here because it is very much intermeshed with what we are doing. But if we were to strictly speak about professional development over the summer as it just relates to technology, there's always this sort of baseline need of onboarding new teachers and getting certain facets of our teaching community or even non-teaching staff sort of adept at using Google suite of tools, understanding what a Chromebook is, understanding how we use our different systems. So over the summer you'll see some baseline trainings on like a refresher on the Google applications and Google Classroom for folks who maybe haven't really gotten there. Most of our staff have, but we always have to offer that. The second level of technology integration is something we've been discussing, but it's something I believe wholeheartedly is we have devices in the hands of our students, and every moment in every class, those devices create lots of pieces of information and data. It's now incumbent upon us to use that information to drive our instructional practices. So whether it be an entrance ticket for our students where we ask them a question, we need to work with our teachers, and I need to work with this team to then figure out, if we have this question, how do we design our lesson after that? Rather than, traditionally when I was teaching, I'd have my question and then I'd have my notes and everything set up to go. But now if I know exactly what they're saying immediately, I should be able to then pivot or at least differentiate or find the appropriate groups. So when I explain it like that, hopefully you see there's a lot of intrinsic connections to project-based learning, pretty much everything. Jen was talking about assessment in science, like that fits directly. So it gets rather abstract, but it's something I'm very excited about, and I really think is what will take the use of our technology to the next level and really make it worthwhile in terms of the investments we've made.
So appropriately, and by mistake, but it worked out, there's 2 chairs empty, and because there's 2 people on our team that couldn't be here. Emily Ufford is a teacher on special assignment who is coordinating our ENL district-wide, English as a New Language supports. And she is doing work this summer on a couple of areas. One of them, which is really exciting, is effective pathways to graduation for all English language learners. So that's really actually looking at a secondary level, and how do we support really all students? She has a focus of ELL students, and I think she's going to work with Lynn to actually broaden that. But how do we help all students towards graduation when they may be coming in from such different situations in their lives, situations we can't even imagine. They may be coming in as 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and how do we work with them so that they have a pathway towards graduation? She's also working, and this is again where things really get interdisciplinary, on co-teaching for ENL students. So a lot of our schools have ENL teachers paired with the classroom teachers, and they're co-teaching. And how do we do that effectively? How do we leverage the practices for ELL students to include all students in effective language learning? She is also, I believe, going to be a part of the Inclusion Conference, and she's going to be a presenter there. So again, we really cover a lot of areas. Someone else who is not here is Rachel Walker. She is another teacher on special assignment. She really focuses on inclusion with autism, students with autism, supporting not just those students, but teachers and staff in supporting those students. She is going to be doing a lot of work that has been going on, will continue this summer, and is kickoff for next year. She's doing an intro to autism. You know, what does that diagnosis mean? What is the huge range of attributes of a student that may have that diagnosis, and working around strategies for various situations. She's also going to work with ESP staff on building independence. So if you are a one-to-one aide with a student with autism, or really with any student that has a diagnosis and requires a one-to-one aide, how are we building towards independence? She's looking at data for how often do we remove a one-to-one aide. And that's going to be the basis of her work. Well, if we're not removing, what are we doing for this student? Are they a crutch, or are they moving a child towards independence? So that's really exciting focus that she's going to start this summer. She's also doing some webinars for the special education department, which are just really what I need to know about an individual education plan. So there are going to be some basic things that we find. We do a lot of hires throughout the year, and so they may miss a summer training. So she came up with the idea, what if we have a webinar so anyone that onboards can get just the basics. Here's what we mean in Ithaca City Schools by an IEP. Here's what going to a CSE meeting means. Here's those basic regs. So that's exciting work she's going to develop. She's also working on including students across the spectrum in classes. So inclusion there, and again, she's another presenter for the Inclusion Conference. She's also starting a series this summer called Zones of Regulation, and it's really work on inclusive work on social-emotional proactive strategies for classrooms. And so that's really exciting. I've been working with the social workers on how can we have a more comprehensive and consistent approach to our social-emotional curriculum and supports that are proactive, that are not reactive when a student is not engaging well and is not doing well emotionally. So beyond what Rachel is doing, we are going to have responsive classroom trainings, morning meeting and academic choice, separate workshops. Those are a part of the responsive classroom approach. We're continuing our work with TCIS, which is Therapeutic Crisis Intervention for Schools. We had a real push on that last summer, and we trained a lot of our non-instructional staff. We're continuing that this summer, and we continued it through the year, and we will do that. And I am continuing work with the social workers on building consensus on a consistent approach to our social emotional curriculum, K through 12. Lots of times we tend to focus on K through 5 because it feels easier, but we really need to focus on how do we support students social emotionally 6 through 12. To a certain degree, it's even more important there. There's a whole lot more going on there.
At the inclusion conference, there'll be some teachers from Lansing who've developed stuff at the middle school level on that that'll be presenting.
So we're really trying to cover a lot of bases there. For administrators, we are going to be encouraging folks again to take teams to the inclusion conference this summer. BOCES is offering a series which starts this summer and goes next year for principals on critical friends. It's a fabulous series of trainings for running meetings and facilitating conversations with protocols so everyone has a voice, so important discussions are begun and continued in a trusting way. We have a lot of administrators that are working for that. Kate is going to be working with them on legal matters, so they're going to have some options to come, some trainings on that. We're going to work on case study PBL leadership, so Lynn spoke of teacher leaders in buildings. We're also going to work with administrators so they have an understanding on that. We're going to be working with them on RTI, being consistent with that. And we're also going to have a strand this summer for principals on planning effective staff meetings for focus on cultural responsiveness, family engagement. So if the principal is the teacher of the teachers, how do they lead the work on cultural responsiveness in their buildings? We really had a focus this year administratively on cultural responsiveness. Now they really need to have a focus in their buildings on that. And we also have an admin retreat at the end of August. I'm going to let Lynn finish up with a little bit on new teacher orientation because we're really trying to expand that.
So this year we're going to expand new teacher orientation from 1 day to 3 days. Way back when I started in 2003, that's how it was. And for new teacher orientation, we're going to continue to build knowledge and understanding of the district mission and vision, but we really want to expand that to give new teachers a real sense of the district as a whole and what the different communities that it represents. So on the second day of the new teacher orientation, we're working on developing a bus tour where we're actually going to take all the new teachers and tour all 12 buildings, and we're working with principals and have asked them to engage with various stakeholders in their buildings to kind of draft the highlights of what they want new teachers and new people to get to know about their specific community and their schools. We're also, as part of that new teacher orientation, going to be doing the foundational work around what is a case study for elementary folks and what is PBL for our secondary folks, so that we have our newest teachers kind of entering in at the same page or even in front of where maybe some of their colleagues are on these initiatives that we're moving forward. So they're really thinking about instructional design from the beginning through the lens of project-based learning. And then working specifically with department chairs at the secondary level and Jen and Caitlin and I to also ensure that there's some structured time for those new teachers to have get all of the curriculum documents that they need so that they're really hitting the ground running and having everything they need in their hands to be successful. But we hope you all will join the bus tour too.
We used to do that over 30 years ago.
Yes. So that is really an overview of what we're doing this summer and into next year.
Wow.
Wow.
Yes.
Comments, Ann first.
Well, I'm very excited.
Question.
And what I'm excited about is just the whole variety, but what I sense is a vision and a response to observations and things that
one needs and certain, and that I really appreciate. I'm really excited to hear about the pre-K and kindergarten relationship. I mean, that's near and dear to my heart. So, like, I feel like it's like focusing on a problem and then trying to address how. And the conference sounds fantastic. Try to come.
Arts integration is going to be a piece of it too.
Excellent.
Well played.
There's just so many things.
Wait, well
I did have one question that for paraprofessionals, which in all these different things, where are they fitting into this?
The inclusion conference? Or?
Yeah, well, no, anywhere
Start with
within the development.
Initially, the thought was to have them participate just on day one of the conference, and I thought, no, that didn't make sense. I want them there on both days.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We're also including ESPs in a lot of our autism work. You know, because they are so much frontline with that, from a bus aide to a teaching assistant. They're going to be a part of the responsive classroom, the TCIS, the inclusion conference, early childhood work. We're going to, if they want to come to the reading work, more power to them. We really are not closing anything out. What we will do is we will highlight things that would be great for them, and they're going to speak to them specifically. But one of the things we found this year, and I have never said no, is if they sometimes sign up for things that I'm surprised at, they always come away with something and have a really great reason for going. So I have always approved that when they have requested to attend something. So I work with Carla, their union president. I email her a lot and say, hey, I don't know if anyone would be interested, but let them know about this. So they're going to be a part.
I also know, just for building specific about BJM, which is many ESP staff, we've done a lot of work this year on finding ways to really find release time during the day to bring them on board, but also we're having an instructional day and a behavioral day a couple days before school starts, and Title I TAs, instructional TAs are invited to the first day paid. So I know, and that's probably happening at many of the building levels.
Yeah, well, I'm very impressed and excited, and as Ann said, it's the individual endeavors that you're involved in, and there's so much thoughtfulness, but also this vision that I certainly, in my years of teaching here and elsewhere, I don't think I've ever experienced this kind of coordinated vision in terms of professional development. And, you know, I was a professional development junkie, and, you know, I see this and it makes me wish that I could sort of have a do-over as a teacher. I could learn all this stuff and then I maybe actually get it right. I also just want to put in a push for what Liddy was talking about, the idea of having the participants really experience the thing that they're going to try to do in their classroom, because that's the way you understand it from the inside out. And the best professional development I had in my years as a teacher was usually at the Bard College Institute for Writing and Thinking, and their approach was always to have the participants experience the things that they were going to do in the classroom. And I went to many 3-day conferences, and we never talked about, well, what does this look like in my classroom until the 3rd day at the end. It was just, we did it. And that's what enabled us to understand what it was all about.
Go ahead.
I'm trying out a different way to get in the conversation. Shiraki would be.
Don't be hesitant. You're fine.
So I really don't mean this pejoratively at all, but the question, I'm very curious about how you guys have incorporated the answer to this question. The team of you are fantastic. I love many of you sitting there, but it's not a diverse group. And as we all have learned together, race has a way of blowing up everything. A child's day, a family. It's powerful stuff for young people, especially around the, I forgot the acronym, but the children who come with certain traumas. right? AIS, a lot of stuff up there that involves that word we do not talk about well yet. So how, within all this, do you manage to have what many people feel is still the most difficult conversation in this country? And do the materials, do the strategies, to what extent do the people in front of the room reflect cultural responsiveness? Like this is not an indictment. We're past that. This is fantastic, but it's still there, and someone should ask the question.
I know, I'm going to sort of go backwards, but this is going to answer the question. After we did our October 21st day on family engagement, I was ready to push forward because it was the next thing on my list, and it was unconscious bias. And I had a meeting with the principals, and I said, okay, what are we going to do next? We're ready for unconscious bias. And they said, whoa, we need to work on family engagement. And at that time, I agreed with that. We continued working on that. But what I realized, and this is sort of why we came up with, this is so interdisciplinary, is we can't not talk about unconscious bias. My feeling is this is a specific answer to your question, is we need to speak to all these things through this lens of reflecting on the biases that we all have. I know I have been a part of a lot of anti-bias work, on undoing racism work, and I feel like I was agreeable to it, open to it. I don't know if I was, that maybe it was my bias or not, but I did watch a lot of, and I'll be honest, my white middle class female friends put up a real wall. And so again, in an interdisciplinary way, if we're talking about project-based learning, but we start the day with a short article on uncovering unconscious bias, when you're thinking of expectations for independent work in project-based learning. I just happened to find an article on that. That's why I'm using that as an example. That we are specifically and explicitly looking for teachers to do some heavy lifting around reflecting on how they come into whatever the work is that we're doing. So, that is, we have a model for staff development, which is, the overview of it is the participants do the heavy lifting. We provide opportunities and experiences for them to reflect on. We have answers that we want them to get at. One of the things that we found, and I've planned with a lot of you guys on this, is we spend 2 to 3 days planning a workshop where we say almost nothing. Because what we've done is we've anticipated the answers we want to get to. So for example, unconscious bias in project-based learning with independent assignments. We ask them to read an article about that. So it's about project-based learning. It brings up expectations. We know what we want teachers to be talking about in their small groups and sharing out. And if we don't get to that, we have a plan to then ask a follow-up question that may be a little harder. So if it doesn't work with that article, we then become more explicit. We say, okay, so the gist of this article was not so much about project-based learning, it was about the fact that we unconsciously have a bias towards our expectations for the young African-American child sitting in front of us. So we let him get away with something that we wouldn't let another student say as their final project. We need to talk about this. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
I like to,
I'm thinking about that. I just want to say this. It also could be someone in the room thinks that the brown child should be the one to talk about slavery or run that project, right? Or it also could be the teacher takes it upon himself to do some incredibly, something I can't imagine, but I know we have a history of it, where little kids are piled up under a desk to pretend on the slave ship, right? So the ways in which these instances traumatize our babies are much more frequent, much deeper than we actually ever engage in talking about it. I'm sure the teachers at the table can give you far more detail about their experiences, but again, I don't want to. I'm trying not to gloss over, because within this is our future. This is the future of education in this country, not just here. But it's a real issue.
Yeah. I'm gonna let you speak. So one of the things that I'm not worried. I'll let you speak. One of the things that we're doing that we're not explicitly starting this summer, but I am starting in the next 2 weeks with principals, is we're going to have at every school a year-long text-based study on bias, racism. I have a list of books that I'll read off to you in a minute. What I've done is ordered one copy of each of these books for each school, and I'm asking principals to pair with a staff member that is willing to be a co-facilitator of this work through the year. We're going to ask them to consider their equity mentors because they've been doing a lot of work in this area. We're going to do some training this summer on facilitating text-based discussions and facilitating discussions about race, facilitating discussions about bias. And then schools are going to choose the book. We're going to train folks on that discussion, and then each of us, sort of like at the administrative level, is going to read one of these books and be a point person, and we're going to be working with administrators throughout the year on reflecting on their work with their staff and how do we continue those conversations and bringing in other folks, because I don't pretend to be an expert on this, but we have to have those explicit conversations. So I'm just going to read some of the titles. Everyday Anti-Racism, Getting Real About Race in School for White Folks Who Teach in the Hood and the Rest of Y'all Too. That's called, it's Reality Pedagogy and Urban Education. Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, Promoting Authentic Engagement and Rigor around Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Students. And there's like 5 more of those. So we're choosing books that have specific strategies in schools with some theory and research, and we're really trying to make it, here's what it can look like in your room, and here's what it cannot look like in your room. I think that in at least one of those books, there's at least one of those examples you gave. And so we're trying to be very specific with teachers to say, in your classroom, what are the things that you need to do to include all students, to value all students, and the reason we're having text-based studies is because the only way to do that is to reflect on their realities and their belief systems. Go.
So, I want you to keep pushing, because what we're doing isn't enough. And we can say we're including these topics in all the threads that we're talking about, but we aren't enough, which is why I ended up pushing for an inclusion conference and why I pushed for special education to be a focus. Because we could say it's being addressed when we're talking about instructional practice and say it's embedded, but that's a crock. It's not getting enough attention that way. The only way it's going to get enough attention is when we put the light on it and say this has to be a focus. And that's where the mindset work and the change in instructional practice happens. We didn't start addressing those special education issues until we started mandating differentiated instruction training for all teachers, K through 12. It wasn't until we started saying that this was important and putting a staff person as a point person and having a central office administrator say, this is my mission, this is what I have to do, and that's what we need to do in this area too.
I remember
I guess to take Eldred, I guess to further his question, I would ask, as an all-white team, do you feel comfortable having those difficult conversations? Because I think I'm not going to say it's easy, but I think it's rather simple to read Jonathan Cole's open quality book, and it's another thing to have a conversation with a white teacher who isn't ready to have those conversations and who will most likely start crying because they feel like they're going to be called a racist. Are all of you prepared to walk through that really messy stage with these teachers because it will happen more than it will not. And I think that's a lot of emotional work that you will individually be doing. So I think it's really important to ask yourself if you're ready to do that work.
So speaking specifically to the relationships pre-KK1 work that we're going to be doing this summer, personally, I believe that you are going to break down stereotypes only through developing personal relationships with people. And there's nothing more personal than teaching someone's children and then a family member knowing a teacher. And so those conversations are the reason that Caitlin and I decided to put this together is because we're noticing that these conversations either aren't happening or are happening and people are folding because there isn't the right support there. So we have specifically thought about this issue, and that's why we're bringing relationships to the table in that sense. And I'm coming at it from the angle of personal relationships, but also knowing that as facilitators, we need to be aware that we are also angling toward the wider idea of race. But I'm coming at it through, this is a personal relationship you have with this family. What do you know about their cultural background? What do you know about what this child brings to school from their background? So I'm coming at it from that angle, but yes, we're prepared to have those conversations. And that's one of the major reasons that we're taking this particular track for early childhood.
And I just want to speak to what I've seen as a teacher, and I'm just going to speak to South Hill and the teachers I've worked with there, and then some of the curriculum that I both developed that's been implemented for years and continues to be. And I will just encourage you, I know many of you go out into schools and walk into classrooms and sit alongside and listen to the conversations. But I would just continue to encourage you to keep doing that because there are really skilled and powerful teachers that I've seen using curriculum that we developed years ago through the MLK Community Build, lessons that we designed and implement year after year to have conversations that are age appropriate and yet in that community of learners that we've worked to build can have those relationships and grow that knowledge of ourselves and of children's selves and how we work together. And I've seen that happen in many places in the schools and in case studies that teachers are developing. They're specifically designed to talk about these patterns in history. And again, it's tied to the standards, but it's also in response to the community in a classroom. And it is difficult work, but I just have seen some beautiful examples of it, and I appreciate the spirit of, yes, we need to keep asking and pushing, but I also want to appreciate what I have seen and continue to see too.
Just got to jump in with one more thing. We can talk about instructional practice and teach folks instructional practice, but until we confront the mindsets and deal with that, people will use the instructional practice differentially. They know what the best practice is, but because of the unconscious bias, they treat perceived low achievers differently than they treat perceived high achievers. And it's only when we start having folks identify those perceived groups in their classes and have peer observation going on, where they're tracking, peers are coming in and tracking how they're interacting with these perceived groups, practicing new ways of interacting, behaving. That was part of the TESA training that we started in this district over 30 years ago, and I just started again this year. That's the stuff that's going to change it. It's not just the practice of how to be a good teacher, but dealing with those issues. Yeah, I know how to be a good teacher, but I'm going to ask this kid a different question because I don't think that kid's so smart, and I don't want to embarrass them. So we come up with all these wonderful reasons why we're protecting the kid, and we reinforce those stereotypes and we keep them locked in, whether it's a poor kid or whether it's a kid of color, whether it's a special ed kid, whether it's a girl versus a boy. And those are the things we've got to call out.
And that's why, as a part of these instructional practices, we're looking at that unconscious bias, and that is why we have these book studies that we're going to focus on with time for adults to talk to one another, to talk about those groups that they may not, value as much in their classroom unconsciously, and uncover those pieces. And Nicole, I agree with you, it's hard work, and it is gonna be uncomfortable, and it's gonna be hard. None of us think it's gonna be easy, but as Lee said, if we don't do it, then it doesn't get done. And we have been tasked to really lead the teaching of adults, and so we can't just teach them, technology. We have to help them uncover where they are, and so that all our students can get taught. Because you guys were appreciating our overall vision. Our overall vision goes back to that, engage, empower, educate everyone. And we can't just say the 4th E. We have to understand ourselves how we get to everyone.
I just want to respond to Lee real quick before Caitlin takes over, because I'm assuming you're going to bring the conversation back to the babies. Not that that's all you do, but I like babies. There was a scenario I remember clearly, and I'm sure some people around the table remember it well. A brown child who was extremely bright, a very specific IEPs. He was legally blind. And his teacher was not performing the requirements of the IEP, which, as you can imagine, would take special effort and blow this child's work up so he could participate. And I got involved, but unraveling that situation was incredibly complex. Everybody's emotions were completely involved. Was she not doing it because of her expectations? Was she not doing it because she didn't have the support to do it, right? In the midst of the 1,000 other tasks she had. So we had some breakthroughs when her and I started to have those difficult conversations. And I asked her, what would you do if this were your child? And she began to have some insight that if it were her child, she'd run through the fires of hell to get that done. Then she had to deal with what was happening in this situation that made her not willing to run through the fires of hell. It was very complicated, but for the children who may already be children who are perceived not to be able to reach certain potential, for us as a group to not have the conversation about how we are actually representing the 504s and IEPs is a very, it's a surgical level of racism. It's very hard to peel apart. There's so many ways to hide behind the door, like you said. There's so many ways to say, I just can't do that today. And this district is only going to diversify. We've got these geniuses who are only going to press us to do more, right? So I'm enjoying listening to your responses. Caitlin, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, Nicole, I appreciate being asked as individuals, are you brave when it gets messy? And I think, like you're saying, Eldred, I would go through the fires of hell to do what's right for the babies, which, my own baby is going to be 23, and it doesn't stop. It's more obvious when they're 3 and 4. But you've asked us specifically here that are sitting here because we are the ones who are walking in and starting those conversations with people sometimes, and sometimes with people who don't want to have that conversation, and we need to push it. And it is messy, and it is hard, and it's long term, and it takes some steel to do it. And I just appreciate that you wanted to know from us, are we ready? And I know the people who are sitting here, and we're led by somebody who's made of steel, and we really are.
It was less of a question of bravery, but I would say most of you have worked in a district for quite a while, and some of these colleagues of yours are people that you're going to say that you're a good person, I know this person is well-intended, and they will make comments that will make you uncomfortable. So being able to create those boundaries to say, well-intended people say nasty things or think nasty things all the time. So just trying to push you a little bit to think about some of the situations you
Really important.
Other questions? Dr. Brown?
Just one comment. I'm hoping that the folks at home are recognizing what's just occurred here. And if you watch the videotape later, recognize this conversation was tough. This didn't happen at 9 a.m. in a closed-door meeting. This was an open session of the board where these kind of conversations were occurring. This doesn't happen in a lot of places. And I think it represents a level of organizational maturity to have this kind of conversation when we could be complacent, but yet the sense of urgency is still there. So I want to thank you all. I mean, as I look there, and yeah, LG, you made an accurate, factual observation of the team that's leading this work. Another actual, factual observation is that, Lee Genethal has educated successfully more young people of color than I know. Lydia Coyle spent time in Norfolk City Public Schools when I was in Richmond City. And in Richmond, we was like, nobody wants to go to Norfolk. So as I look at this team that we are tasking to do this work, yeah, you can make some obvious observations, but when they told me going to, I won't say they were loud because my mom was watching, but going through the gates of whatever you said, I'll go with these folks, not because of what they look like, because of what they've done, and what I know they're going to do and do every day. So again, I'm excited about this plan and our approaches to the work, and thank you for allowing me to live and work in a community that's is able to have this kind of conversation in an open public meeting of a Board of Education when you could be complacent because of our numbers and our successes. But we're talking as if we're at rock bottom right now, and we've got a lot more work to do, which I appreciate, so thank you.
Dr. Brown, I mentioned the transformation of the district over the last 10 years, and I think certainly this conversation tonight would not have happened 10 years ago. And that what I'm hearing about the professional development initiatives for this next year, that was not happening 10 years ago. So I think it's really another indicator of really just the power of people coming together to do great things. And so I certainly thank you all. Anyone else? We have a few more items of business, but you guys can sneak out and you don't have to stay. You only have 31 more days.
I'm not going away.
Right, I didn't think you were, so you don't need to spend another 15 minutes here. Thank you all. Thank you.
He's going to retire and put out conferences.
Yeah, I think if we were doing the calendar a little bit, I think it was obviously July is after 31 days, right? Okay. So good. We do have a few more items, but we'll move through these.
I'll move a resolution authorizing the commencement of a special proceeding pursuant to section 443A of the New York Education Law as presented in the agenda.
Second.
Second by Maura. And you can see it before you. Any need to question, discuss? Nicole did step out, right? Okay, so we'll just, I think we're okay. All in favor? That is everyone, and Nicole did step out.
Since I'm the only one that doesn't have a conflict, I'll move.
There you go.
The authorization for the Central New York School Boards Association annual meeting attendance as presented.
I'll second.
Second by Sean.
With the conflict.
With the conflict.
Do we all recuse ourselves?
Brad, a board member of one.
What we're actually authorizing is the expenditures.
The expenditure to attend.
Right. And so Brad is Dr. Brown is speaking at this, and Brad is dissing Dr. Brown and not going. So for the record, public record, Brad is dissing you by not going. Right. So move seconded, and we'll show up. Nicole is back, and Nicole knows we're just voting on the school board attendance at the annual meeting, and we're good. And move seconded, all in favor. That's everyone.
I feel safer. I don't like to go on the road anymore. Oh my God.
And I'll just note that I nominated Brad for an honorary title last year, and then dissed him by not being able to go because I was out of town. So turnabout,
Yeah,
fair
goes
play.
around, comes around, right, exactly. Upcoming dates of importance, there are a few. Like next week, Dr. Brown.
Vote early and often.
Do it the Chicago way. There is a budget vote next week. Brad, do you want to just run through? There's four.
Noon to 9 next week. It's all the school buildings, plus the Racker Center, the D&D Fire Hall, and the Varna Community Center. Noon to 9, 3 seats open for the board. Dr. Wasloo, Dr. Ursula Gradwell, and Mr. Malcolm are all
Who was not a doctor, apparently.
Yeah, apparently not.
We appreciate that, Chris, showing up for that. Okay.
There's 3 candidates for the 3 seats. There will be 4 items of propositions. Number 1 will be the budget. Number 2 will be expenditures from the existing capital reserve for buses and for a couple of summer projects, one at Caroline and at LACS, maintenance projects. The third proposition will allow the Board of Education to create the 2017 capital reserve. That would allow us, if we have the money to put in it, to then go back to the voters and ask you if you'd like us to spend it on capital items like buses in the future. That's what that one's there for. And then the fourth one is granting the school district the ability to give an easement to 308 the Parkway, which has a sewer line over the Hugo Heights school property. So we're accepting $500 and granting them an easement, but since it's a permanent transfer, we have to have voter approval.
We're all about sewer lines.
Isn't that the sewer line under the property?
No, it's right along the edge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you're sure we're never going to need that sewer line for ourselves?
That one? No, this is just, it serves
residential,
one home.
yeah.
Okay.
It serves one home. No, I know what you're talking about. There actually is a sewer
right.
line underneath the Hugo Heights building.
Oh,
That one
okay.
had an easement.
Okay.
And Sean was not here at the last meeting when I said nice things about the candidates, the 3 board members that are running, but I'll just say it again. The district, the community is very fortunate that Pat, Sean, and Chris are running again. It's going to be a pleasure to have them continue to serve the community, can continue to serve the kids of this community, assuming folks show up to vote. So that is important. Next Tuesday is very important. Not equally important, but an important item for us is 8 o'clock on Wednesday, that's the next day, we do have to verify the election results, and we do have to do it at 8 o'clock. We're not going to do it before then. Kate, there's rules about that, right? I mean,
There are rules about that, yeah.
that is state rules. It is not something we're making up. But the polls close at 9, and we will verify the results at 8 o'clock the next day.
In accordance with the education.
Yeah, exactly. So next, and the Monday after, that will be a special work session night, because we're not having our work sessions next Tuesday because we're voting. And so we'll have our work sessions on Monday, and then we'll have our last voting meeting for May. And if that's clear, hopefully that's clear for everybody. And so we look forward to next Tuesday, and we'll be anxiously awaiting the results and look forward to people voting however they wish to vote. We cannot campaign one way or the other, but we wish turnout is a good thing. Anything else for the good of the group? Anything that we missed? Outstanding presentation by the development folks, Liddy and her group. Thank you, Liddy.
They're amazing.
I'm not sure when you hired all those people, Liddy, but they're a great group, and just an indicator of the talent that we have and the staff in this district. So anything? Are we good?
I'm going to make one comment.
Yes, please.
Dr. Brown, continue to be bold. That's what leads to these conversations. It's interesting that we adopted a 100% graduation goal 6 years ago. Bold to do that. Now we're talking about whether we should move to 100% ag grade reading. Bold. What did the Board of Regents and the Commissioner of Education do today.
95%.
They said 95% was good enough, so they're telling us that 250 of our kids are throwaway children, and I disagree with that vehemently. They are not throwaway children, and that's why it's all and every, and why it's 100%. So I say, please keep being bold. I think it's because we're having these conversations is why we're able to make the progress that we're making and why we're able to have those goals. And I'm disappointed that the state of New York is sending that signal that 5% of these kids can just be tossed aside.
And I would just follow that up, that I certainly encourage board members to continue to ask the tough questions. Thank you, Eldred, for leading us there, and Nicole and others for weighing in. It doesn't happen unless we make it happen. We put the pressure on and have the expectations, and Dr. Brown and his team and everybody else, unfortunately, has to try to meet 100%. But 100% there is no other target. So we appreciate that. So we'll see everybody next Tuesday, and I think we're. Chris, you good? Anything else?
Next Wednesday. Very good. Everybody voting next Tuesday. You'll see us at a meeting next Wednesday.
I'll be out of town.
Wednesday.
Oh,
we're done. Thank you, everyone.
I'm either celebrating or fleeing for my life. I don't know which. We'll see.
Oh.